Hey everyone, welcome to the Center Church podcast. Our mission is simple. We help the people of BYRON Center focus on Christ, community, and our co-mission to see zero people unchanged by Jesus. We hope that this message will help you draw near to the person of Jesus, be challenged and encouraged by his word, and to be moved to action. We hope these next few moments are a blessing to you and equip you to see who God really is and who you are in him.
I hope you guys are good. My life, I wanted to give a little update. It's kind of weird not having a bumper video. It shakes me up. No transitions. But we're good. We're rocking. I want to give an update about my life because last time I've been up here was before September, and September 1st was a pretty big day in the Alkema household because it became the Alkema household. I got married on September 1st. Crazy time. On top of that, we ended up moving into an apartment together. It's called Water Chase Apartments, right up on BYRON Center Ave a little bit. And to bring it all back in the last couple months, I've actually got a couple new gigs. I work here at Center Church as a pastoral resident. Again, hi, I'm Jack, if you haven't met before. I do some stuff with the youth direction, directing youth group and stuff like that, but also get opportunities like this, which is awesome. But now I'm also an ABA technician, if you know what that is. It's Applied Behavioral Analysis Technician. Doesn't really make sense when you add the technician on that one, but yeah, so it's fun. I do get to do some behavioral coaching with kids. And then the other one that's perhaps a little bit more unexpected is that I actually had a door open up for me to join a childcare facility. So yes, I work at childcare now at Solid Rock Childcare over in Hudsonville. If you can picture that, it's really a weird thing because I'm the only guy there, but at the same time, I'm the only one who can actually keep up with the kids. So it's a mantle it's a burden I carry. Well, let's jump into some of the teaching texts here so we can get going today. We have John 10, verses 1 through 6. If you have your Bible on your phone, I encourage you to open up to it. Otherwise, there are some Bibles back there. Otherwise, it'll be on the screen as well. Got a lot of options. So if you're still turning there, no worries. We're going to jump in at verse 1. John 10, verse 1 starts off with Jesus' words to the Pharisees by saying, "Very truly I tell you, Pharisees, anyone who does not enter the sheep pen by the gate, but climbs in by some other way is a thief and a robber. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep." A very important figure. "The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep listen to his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. And when he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him." And this is the important part we're going to focus on today, "because they know his voice. But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice." And Jesus used this figurative speech, but the Pharisees did not understand what he was telling them. Well, hopefully we'll have better luck today as we jump into it. And I will be transparent. As I was doing some research and preparing this message today, something dawned on me. Again, maybe it's just because I'm in childcare freshly now, but being a shepherd is a lot like working with kids. Maybe parents, you can picture this a little bit. If not, let's jump in. I think I have a couple good comparisons here that make sense. So what is being a shepherd? You have a flock of sheep, right? And your job as a shepherd is to care for them, to protect them, but also to make sure they stay as a flock. Sheep like to wander. So shepherds have this little shepherd's hook that's a staff with a little hook at the end that they use to wrangle some lost sheep. And I wish I had a hook like that for when I'm trying to get the kids off the playground. They do not like to listen. And even further, you just got to keep 10 preschoolers together, which is not near impossible. But yes, nonetheless, you got to keep them in a flock. And on top of that, a shepherd's job is to clean up after the sheep. Shepherds are walking around with the manure of the sheep, gone wherever it is. You got to watch where you step. And just like that in childcare, we're looking out for feces bombs wherever I don't even know if I can say that. Sorry. But it's something similar. We're still managing through potty breaks and different accidents that are unfortunate, but always going to happen. And then another comparison I'll make is something called green pastures. We see in Psalm 23 where he leads me by green pastures, this luscious grass meadow, and all these nice, cool, still rivers and streams that lie there, where the shepherds and the sheep can just lay down and they can rest. And we call that nap time in childcare. We don't have the nice grass. We have little tiny blue cots for the kids to lay on, and we have the sound of whales and waves to lull them to sleep. Well, as best as we can try. And another thing that became apparent, it took about a week of me being in childcare. You see, in this first week, I did not have a problem with getting the kids to play. They were let's go play tag, or their favorite thing was to just do a bunch of different things. I can't even tell you the games they make up. Dinosaurs, jail, bad guy, good guy, all the fun stuff. But when it came to actually getting them to do the things I needed them to do, like sit down for lunch, we got to go to the bathroom, come on, let's go inside, that was a lot harder for me. They did not listen to my voice at all. And I think the reason why became apparent about a week in. You see, we sat down for lunch, and this little boy, he looks at me, and he goes, "Why are you here?" I'm like, okay, good that you know what to look out for, I guess. But then I'm like, oh, I'm your teacher, because that's the power in a position that's been entrusted with me, my responsibilities. I'm supposed to help lead and teach these kids. So I say, well, I'm your teacher. And he looks me right in the eye, and a smile grows on his face. He goes, "No, you're not. No, you're not." He goes, "You're a boy." Just like that. He goes, "You're a boy." And at that moment, a little light bulb went off in my head because I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm the only guy here. So for them, I look like the maintenance guy who comes in. I look like the dad that drops them off. I don't look like their teacher. And he even affirmed this by saying, again, this is some shocking insight from kids, And they said, "Teachers are girls. You're a boy," just to add that on. But that's the case, right? I mean, I'm the only guy here, and they don't have guy teachers. So for me to come in, I don't look like a teacher to them. I'm not a voice of a teacher to these kids. It's plain and simply, a girl's voice is. A woman's voice has way more power over these kids than I ever could. Hopefully I'll get there eventually, but that's what it is right now. That's the reality. These kids have a voice that they listen to. And we just read in John 10 that the sheep have a voice that they listen to as well. The shepherds. That when the shepherd calls out these sheep's names and they call them closer to, the sheep listen. And they want to listen. They run towards the shepherd. So just like sheep are similar to kids here, I think we, even as a church and as people, regardless of where we find ourselves, we also have a voice in our life that we listen to. Whether you realize it or not, there is a voice in your life that has authority over you. So I want to ask you right now, whose voice do you listen to in your life? I mentioned I'm married, so my voice is my wife. I'm learning. It's my go-to. No, I'm just kidding. But not. So then, who is the voice in your life? Who's the voice in your life? Is it your spouse or your partner's voice as they continue to challenge you and they encourage you and support you throughout life? Is the voice that you listen to your parents' voice? Even to this day, just the way they have guided you and helped you develop has been a source of discernment and comfort that you still look for. Is the voice in your life that you listen to the voice of your boss? Do you have a good connection with your boss that when they give you encouragement and critiques that you take that seriously? Or is it your children's voice that you seek to listen to them to no ends because you love them so dearly and you would do anything for their comfort, their safety, and their security? Center Church, whose voice do you seek after? Now, I'm going to go Sunday school answer here, but the answer is God that we're going to get to. But it can be other people in your life too. But it's the point to be aware of here. Whose voice do you seek after? See, we've been in this sermon series called Everyday Influencers. And we've been talking about what it looks like for us as Christians to be an influencer of our faith in our everyday lives. If you're here last week, Pastor JJ brought an incredible message about how we're not called as Christians to sit in this meeting place with our plush carpets, but to be out there in the world doing some life-saving work. But what does that really look like? How do we do this life-saving work? Well, I think that's why Jesus shows us here in John 10. It was this helpful analogy of shepherd and sheep. You see, this idea of shepherd and sheep is not a new one, but it's one that's been prophesied over for a long time. We see in the books of Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah, that there is a prophesied true shepherd that is to come. And here in John 10, Jesus is claiming that mantle, saying, I am the fulfillment of this prophecy. I am the good, true shepherd. I am the one whose voice the sheep listen to. And from this, we need to look at it because it's a very important thing, right? Whose voice do you listen to? Is it the shepherd's voice? I'm turning that to you. Is it the shepherd's voice? Do you know the voice of Jesus in your life? Do you seek and follow it? And let me give this little analogy that Jesus also gives. It's from verse 5, John 10, verse 5. What does this voice look like? Well, it's not the stranger's voice, which we see. For the sheep do not know the stranger's voice. The strangers come in and they go, and the sheep don't know them because they know their shepherd's voice, a voice that has been built upon trust and relationship and time and work, intentionality. That is how we find the shepherd's voice, and that's why we trust it. I mean, to help illustrate this, there's a really cool story that happened in World War I. You see, out in the city of Jerusalem, there were troops stationed. And as any war does, it drains their supplies to the point where they have very little rations left. So they have this idea one night as it's getting darker. There's a couple flocks of sheep, a couple hills over. Why are we starving here when we could go and have some actual sheep, some good food to have? So they plan one dark night to go out, and they're going to drive this sheep away from the shepherd, and they're going to take it to their camp. And so they do that. They sneak out, they break into the flock, and they start driving the sheep out. And the shepherd awakes to this horrific sight of just armed soldiers taking away his livelihood, his sheep. And armed with a little shepherd's hook, you know what he does? He gives us his signature call that the flock know and recognize. And from there, the flock actually runs to the shepherd, past all the powerful guards and the soldiers here with actual weapons and actual power, and they run towards the shepherd because of the power of his voice. So they don't recognize the strangers here that are trying to take them away. They recognize their shepherd's voice. And do you recognize your shepherd's voice in the same way? I mean, I don't know where you are in your faith walk. I'd love to talk to you about it. But I can tell you one thing. Wherever you are, Jesus is calling your voice. He is desperately calling out your name in love, in affection, in compassion. He wants to be with you. So again, I don't know where you are. Maybe you haven't heard his voice in your life yet. And if that's you, I promise you he is there. And that he will slowly but surely take away those obstacles that are keeping you from him. He will start breaking down walls to get to you. Because he loves you so dearly and wants to be with you. So if that's you, are you going to listen? Maybe that's not you. Maybe you've given your life to Christ and you've heard these inklings of his voice and you want to seek out more ways to hear them. Well, if that's you, then I want to affirm you because you're in the right place. Because here at Center Church, we all share that drive and that passion to hear his voice, to be with him, whether through prayer, worship, our praise, our fellowship, with everything we have, we want to hear that voice and be with Jesus. So are you going to listen? And again, maybe that's not you. Maybe you've heard his voice your entire life, but now something has happened. Something unbelievable, something you never thought could have happened to you and your family. And you feel frustrated about where you are. And you say, if I've listened to this voice for so long, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me right now? And again, I don't know what you're going through, but I know one thing. And that's the voice is still there. The shepherd is still calling you, and he wants to be with you. And he wants to comfort you and just hold you. So are you going to listen? See, wherever you are in searching and hearing God's voice, there's a truth you need to hear. And that is, Jesus has stepped into your life one way or another, whether you realize it or not. He's been chasing after you since before you were born, and he has already given his life for you on the cross so that you can be with him, that you can be made clean and pure, and be holy. You can be different than the sinful, broken world we live in, and you can make a difference in this world as well. You have a new life both here on earth and forever in heaven, a life as a citizen of his kingdom where you can be freed. See, Jesus, he lives now and he gives his life for you still. He lives to plead for you, to be with you. He lives to represent us in heaven, and he lives to rule providence over you. Sadly, it's not that easy to hear his voice. You see, there are strangers in the world whose voices are mumbling and being a distraction for us and seeking the shepherd's voice. But there are some voices that are a little bit more powerful. There are some voices that we need to be aware of because they have an agenda. And these we see in John 10, verse 1, are the thieves and the robbers who jump over the fence to get to the flock. And what's an important distinction to make is how do we tell who these voices are? Are they really voices from the shepherd? Are they voices that are trying to help us find the shepherd? Or are they just voices out with an agenda against us? Well, the easiest way to figure this out is to look in verse 7. Because in verse 7, we see Jesus describe himself as something powerful. A door. And maybe not the picture of power you were hoping for, but he's a door. And the way he describes himself as a door is for the sheep. And while this sounds figurative, you're like, okay, yeah, Jesus is how we get to heaven. That makes sense. No. He's describing himself as a literal door. Because back in the day, in the pasture lands, sheep's pens were made with one entrance. It was just 2 rock pillars with a space in between them. There was no actual door here because the door was the shepherd. The shepherd would actually lay down in this gap and act as a door, keeping the sheep within the flock and keeping the threats outside of it. But here we now see the thieves and the robbers who enter the flock by jumping the fence, who don't come through the door, don't come through Jesus to get to us. They come over the fence. So if they'd come without the voice of Jesus, maybe that's something we should be aware of. On a side note, that's also something I do in childcare a lot, is act as a door. I got a good move where I put my foot out and hook the kids from running toward. Okay, never mind. But anyways, keeping you guys awake. These thieves and robbers, they come with an agenda. They want to take you and they want to fulfill their own ambitions. I mean, it's pretty easy to tell who are thieves and robbers in our world, especially right now. I mean, you can't look anywhere else in the world, like anywhere in the world, without hearing these voices vie for your attention, trying to get something from you. I mean, I can list off a couple, but you're probably already picturing some in your mind. I mean, we have celebrities right now who are using their position of fame and wealth and a power to just satisfy their own desires of getting you closer to them, of taking stuff from you. You have politicians who are trying to offer you a world of whatever you want it to be, a world made in your image, as long as you agree to vote for them. The businesses who promise to give you whatever it is you desire, as long as you give them your loyalty and your dollar. See, there are loud voices in our world that vie for your attention, that want you to leave the shepherd and go towards them. They offer to fulfill your needs and your desires, and they promise you whatever you want to hear. But that promise only comes from their position and their achievements. They have no actual power because they don't have the trust and relationship with you that Jesus does. They don't have the ability to love you, sacrifice for you, and commit to you like Jesus does. That is how we can tell the difference between these voices. However, I wish it was that simple. Because so often I feel like with those worldly voices, we can just push them out, right? Because we can just hunker down, we can claim our spot, and we can isolate ourselves from the world. We can hear those stories of the broken people that have, and who have promised bad things and promised good things that just have not come to fruition. But we're safe in our circle, is what I wish I could say. See, these voices don't just exist externally, they exist internally. They're here in our community, sadly. We see this other figure pop up, and not just thieves and robbers, but the wolves. And Jesus himself equates in Matthew 7, verse 15, that false prophets are wolves in sheep's clothing. This isn't just some nursery rhyme. This is a thing that Jesus wants us to be aware of, is that wolves are in sheep's clothing. So they're not just thieves and robbers who are coming in from the sides, from the fences, but they're here right now amongst us flockmates. These voices are internal as well as external. But you want to know what? As scary as that may be, the shepherd's voice is here too. And he's still calling you. The other voices may draw your attention, but we can always remain faithful to the shepherd as he remains faithful to us. So then why do we even talk about these voices? Well, because it's a good thing for us to be aware of. See, Jesus wants us to center ourselves on him before we can try to show him to others. We're talking about everyday influencers, how we are called to be an influence in our world every day. And I know you want to see the world changed. I know you want to see it changed in Christ's image. Because the world right now is broken, and I don't think we have to argue much about that. Our soul just turns in turmoil. I hope yours does as mine does, that the world we live in needs help. But before we can go out there and be an influence on it, before we can go out and be an everyday influence, we need to be influenced every day ourselves. Did you catch that? We need to be influenced by the shepherd's voice every day before we can go out there into the world. That is why it's so important for us to hear the shepherd's voice and to know it. And once we know the shepherd's voice, we can then draw from that strength to be sheep who shepherd fellow sheep. Yeah, I know that's weird. I said it first service. I'll say it again. This is a little bit of a soapbox. So this is weird. Ride it with me. I think I'm cooking on something good though. So we need to be sheep who shepherd sheep. What does that mean? Well, at the end of this passage, in verse 16, that we see this idea of shepherding and such, we see that Jesus talk about there's one shepherd and there is one flock. And I think so often, especially in our Christian saturated communities, we draw the intention of when we go out there to do Christ's work, we need to be the one who saves those people. And we try to take this role as a shepherd upon ourselves. We're saying we're shepherding people. We're going to be the shepherd. And we go out there in the world trying to save them. But I think that's a fool's game. And again, write it with me, please, because it's a weird thing I'm saying. It could be nitpicky, but I think it's important. Because we're not called to be shepherds. We're called to be shepherding people. We're called to be sheep. There is one flock and there's one shepherd. And Jesus already fills the role of that shepherd. We're called to be sheep. We're called to just be out there in the world. And not just to be sheep, but sheep who shepherd our fellow sheep. See, we don't have the voice of unconditional love. We don't have the saving grace that God has already shown us. We've experienced it. We know where to find it if we know where the shepherd's voice is, but we can't give that out ourselves. We can show people where to go, and that's what we're called to do. We're called to be sheep who shepherd sheep. In other words, we're supposed to be in the flock. We're supposed to be in the everyday that we can then influence the everyday. Let me say that again. When we're in the everyday, we can then influence it. But so often I feel like we push ourselves back. We pull it back because we're scared to. We don't want to mess it up. And then we get to this picture that I think describes this in the text, which is called a hired hand. You see, the hired hand is the one who imitates the shepherd, which is what I feel like we struggle with sometimes. Because we want to see lives change. We want to see a difference made. But we're scared to mess it up. Maybe this is me personally, but I get scared sometimes to go out there into the world because I don't want to fail God. I'm going to be really vulnerable here, so please give me a little bit of grace, but I'm hoping you guys can empathize a little bit with this. I'm scared to go out there and have a conversation about my faith. I'm terrified to. I'm scared to go out there, as JJ said, and pop those bubbles. Because if I start a conversation, what if I mess it up? What if I'm the Christian that failed them? Now they're never going to know Christ. I didn't save them in this conversation, so why should I even go out? Because I just ruined it. I'm going to mess it up. And we put this weight on ourselves, especially me. I put this weight on me all the time, that if they ask me a question and I don't know the answer to, they're going to be like, ha, I knew it. You're a sham. This whole thing is bad. And I don't save them, and I'm the Christian that failed. I don't need a show of hands, but I'm going to raise my hand because I think I really struggle with this. I know I really struggle with this because I try to be this hired hand sometimes. I put this weight on myself when in actuality, all I'm called to be is a sheep who shepherds sheep. All I'm called to be is when I go in and initiate this generic conversation. I mean, what do we say? The way to save people is to take them out to coffee and share your faith and you're good, right? That's a generalized way in the Christian culture. And when I go and do that, the real way that I make a difference isn't by leading them to Christ in that very moment. I'm like, oh man, I forgot my Romans road. Oh man, I forgot all these tools for evangelism and such. Or they just heard my story and they're like, that's cool, but that doesn't apply to me. You see, when I'm a sheep who shepherds sheep and not a hired hand, those questions that I'm asked that I don't know the answer to, I can then reply with 3 magic words. And they're not, I love you. They're, I don't know. I mean, that sounds like heresy, right? It sounds like, oh, well, then you're failing them already. But again, that weight of saving them, that burden is not our own, but it's the shepherd's. We know where that voice is. We just have to point them to him. So when we say, I don't know, we can then follow it up free of this weight of trying to save them ourselves. And we can say, I don't know, that's a good question. I don't know, I've never thought of it that way. I don't know, but can I get back to you? Can I get your number? Because I want to look this up and I want to find a way to help you with this. Because I am now very invested. I like this. It's a good question. It's a good way to look at it. I don't know. My pastor would love to hear this too. Do you want to come to church and tell him about it? I would think he would love to hear this. Or can I just ask my pastor for you? Do you see how the difference there? Where this failure, by at least my standards of what it means to go out and save people, where I don't know the answer, now becomes an opportunity to walk alongside them, to be a fellow sheep with sheep. Does this make a little bit of sense? Maybe I'm just on my soapbox and I'm just spouting out some stuff, but I think there's something here. Because when we're starting to be a sheep who shepherd sheep, life looks different. I mean, people, we go out in our lives and our spheres of influence, and we can think of people all around us, right? Whether we're in our homes, whether we're in our communities, our works, areas of work, our school, even playing pickleball out there. Like, there's different areas where you're just a sheep among sheep. But when you're a sheep who shepherds sheep, there's an intentionality behind it. You're not just coming to church, but you're coming to church to be poured into, to listen to the shepherd's voice, to recenter yourself. And then you're going out and being a sheep who shepherds sheep when you're a part of a community outside of us church walls, with our life groups, with a Bible study, even just having people over for dinner. You're a sheep who shepherds sheep when you decide to share your story and not worry about whether it saves them in that moment, but just so that you can show them the shepherd's voice that you found. You're a sheep who shepherds sheep when you just simply start a prayer list about those who don't know Christ and commit to praying for them. Church, we have our good shepherd. And I'm going to tell you, he's got his role mastered. It was prophesied before, and he's the fulfillment of all of those prophecies. This burden of saving people is not our own. The burden that we bear is to just be out there and to be sheep who shepherd sheep. So now is the big question as we wrap up today. Who are you shepherding? I'm mentioning those sheep that you can be around, but who are you shepherding? And it doesn't have to just be that one person. Sometimes I've always heard pastors say, who's that one person in your life? Because they're trying to start you small. But at the end of the day, who are all those people in your life that you could be shepherding with? Is it your family, your friends, your coworkers, the members of this church even? Is it a close friend who is just struggling with anxiety and needs someone to walk alongside of them, to comfort them and reaffirm them? Is it the coworker who's swamped in their work and their pressures that are being placed on them and is just looking for someone to be in that pit with them? Is it the family member who has questions about the concepts of faith and doubts about God? Is it the student who looks up to you as a role model and looks to you as a guide for their life? Is it the partner of your life who is facing burnout or spiritual emptiness? Is it a new believer who feels lost and just wants someone to talk to them about this thing called Jesus? Who are you shepherding? It doesn't take much. You're not called to save them yourself. The shepherd's voice is there, and that is why it's so important that we know his voice. See, as people who are in tune with the shepherd's voice, are you leading them to the good shepherd? Are you leading them with the same love and sacrifice and commitment he has shown you? Are you leading with humility where you're lowering yourself so God can go further? You see, success in shepherding is not about converting them off your first conversation. Sometimes it's just planting a seed. And sometimes it's just watering a seed that someone else has planted. And sometimes you are the one who is able to see that harvest that God has, where they give their life to Christ. All of the work is important. And all of it takes sheep who shepherd sheep. So are you a representation of Jesus to those around you? And are you showing them the voice that saved you? Would you pray with me? Father God, we just turn to you in this moment. Lord, humble our hearts and our mind so we may see more of you. Lord, whatever it is we're going through right now, those voices in our life, those situations that are hindering us from hearing your voice, I pray that you would remove them, that you would break down these walls, that you would light up the darkness so that we may hear your words of truth and love and life once again. Lord, this isn't just something we do. We don't just come here to church. We want to be empowered so that we can see your kingdom grow and move outside of these walls. And we can be an everyday influencer, not by how we bear this weight of salvation and how we save people left and right, but how we are just sheep among sheep, and how we let you go before us and pave the way as we obediently answer the call. Lord, I'm sorry for the way that I have personally carried this weight, and the ways that I've put myself before you as a hired hand. Humble my heart, God. Humble our hearts, so that we don't get in the way of the good works you have planned out. Lord, we want to see you transform our world, our communities, our families, to bring change that only you can bring. So we offer our everything to you now. Fill us with your Holy Spirit and send us boldly and bravely into the world. I pray this in your powerful name. Amen.
We hope this message encouraged you in seeing who God is and who you are in him. If you want to take a next step, visit centergr.com/next. We look forward to connecting with you there, and we'll see you back here next week.